Let's do a little review of Out Out. Notice it begins with the buzzsaw snarling and rattling in the yard. So we have two elements here. One is snarling, which is a kind of threatening sound that an animal would make, and so we actually have a little bit of foreshadowing here, because of course we know now the end of the poem what's going to happen. And the two sounds together immediately activate our sense of sound. Now, when a writer or a poet wants to bring something alive, wants to make the reader feel that they're there, that we are there when this is happening, it will be done by activating the senses. Why is this? We experience the world through our five senses: hearing, smelling, feeling, seeing, touching. So whenever these senses are activated, even in our imagination, it gives us the feeling that we're experiencing, we're going through a real experience. And this is what we actually see in the poem, where he begins by activating our senses. First of all, our sense of sound. Then we have dust, which kind of activates our sense of smell, and even a little bit of taste, because sometimes when you're in a very dusty environment, you not only smell it, but you also kind of have a taste of it in your mouth. And again, we have here we have very clearly smell, sweet scented stuff, and of course, sweet is also something that activates our sense of taste. Then we have the breeze drawing across it, and the breeze is something that we can actually feel on our body. And then last we have sight. We have eyes, seeing the 5 mountain ranges and seeing the sunset. So in this introduction, where Frost kind of puts us in the place where the poem is taking place, we really get a sense of being there because all 5 of our senses have been activated. Sound, smell, taste, feeling, and sight. Then we get to the word sunset, which also could be a little bit of foreshadowing, because sunset can be symbolic of the end of life, which of course is what we'll see in the poem. Then we have the saw snarling and rattling, snarled and rattled, snarled and rattled. So we have this repetition. And why the repetition here? Of course, it's not only to continue to activate our senses, but also I think it creates kind of a sense of what the boy is going through. You know, the boredom, that this is just going on, and it's like it's never going to end. So I think that we also get that from the repetition. And repetition also gives us a sense of being there by giving us a feeling that time is passing, right? That time is going on, and so again we have a feeling that we're actually there while this is happening. Okay, then we get into nothing happened, which is kind of almost ironic because soon something is going to happen, but until now nothing happened. And now we have the fact that it was toward the end of the day. Call it a day, I wish they might have said, to please the boy by giving him the half hour that a boy counts so much from work. Now, first of all, notice we have a repetition of boy, because we're emphasizing that this person doing the job is very young, this person doing the work. And we also see that it's near the end of the day. Now, I wish, it's very interesting that the poet jumps into the poem and gives his opinion and says that he wishes that they might have, sent this boy home from work. So, first of all, we have the poem very clearly giving an opinion, giving his point of view. But I think also when we read the poem, when I read I'm thinking of myself. So it's almost like putting me in the place as if I'm standing there, and I, the reader, wish that they had let this boy out of work. And I think there's something else here. Who else is wishing that they would call it a day? Well, certainly the boy. So when the poet says, I wish they might have called it a day, a half hour early, I think he's thinking of what he's thinking, but also of what the boy is thinking. And as I said, I is also me, the reader. So it's kind of a way of making me, the reader, identify with the boy by kind of putting his thoughts in my head. So I, the reader, together with the poet, wish they might have called it a day. And I'm thinking the thoughts that actually the boy is also thinking. So I think maybe it gives us a way of kind of identifying with the boy. Okay, then we have the sister calling supper. And at the word, the saw, as if to prove saws knew what supper meant. So we see the personification of the saw. We saw it earlier when it said rattle. Now we see as if the saw knows something, as if it knows what supper means. And we have the word leaped. So we have kind of three, two or three elements that personify the saw as if it's something alive, maybe an animal. And I've said, why have the personification of the saw? Possibly it kind of adds kind of an evil intent. It wasn't just an accident, but it almost makes it seem like some evil power or evil source. The other possibility is that the personification here is reflecting the boy's point of view. Because from the boy's point of view, it's as if the saw leaped out at him. Of course, we know it didn't really leap out. It just seemed to leap. But from the boy's point of view, it seemed to leap. And then again, we have kind of the objective point of view. It seemed to leap. He must have given the hand. The only way we can really understand this accident is that he must have put his hand in the wrong place. And then, however it was, it's as if the poet doesn't want to make a decision. Was it the boy who is it the objective truth that the boy put his hand there? Or, was there some sort of evil behind this? The poet doesn't want to decide, so he says, however it was, whichever way it was, whether it was just an accident or whether there was some sort of evil force here, whatever it was, neither refused the meaning. Neither of them drew back, and that's how the accident happened. And on another clip that you heard, it's emphasized that the accident is presented in very clean terms. There's not a gory description. There's not blood. Even when he uses the word spill, he's not going to say the blood spilled, but he's going to say the life spilled. So I think he doesn't want us to he doesn't want us to look at the gory details, because he's more trying to look at the general context and the social context of this accident and not having us focus on the gory details. So then we have the hand with this kind of rueful laugh, and someone else already mentioned in another clip that sometimes when something tragic happens, we kind of react with laughter. It's kind of a certain psychological defense. That his first reaction is the first cry that he cries out is a laugh. Okay, but he is begging. He's half begging, and he's half trying to hold up the hand to keep the blood from spilling out. And then again, notice how he keeps repeating the boy. Okay, but then the boy saw all. He understands. He understands that he's in big trouble, or at least he sees it. He sees it. Maybe he understands it, and he's saying here he's old enough to know big boy. Okay, big boy is these two words kind of in a way almost contradict each other. He's a boy, but he's also called big. Maybe he's big in size. Maybe he's called big because he's big enough to do work. But clearly the work he's doing is a man's work. It's not a boy's work. It's a man's work. And here we already begin to see the opinion of the poet that this is not work that's appropriate for this boy. He's still a child at heart. Okay, and he saw all spoiled. He realizes he's going to lose his hand, and this is going to, of course, spoil his life. So he cries, "Don't let him cut my hand off, the doctor, when he comes." Don't let him, sister. And again, we have repetition. Don't let him do it. Don't let him cut it off. And this is, of course, ironic because the hand has already been cut off. As he says, the hand was gone already. So I think the boy is like in denial. On the one hand, he saw that the hand, he saw it all. He saw that all was spoiled. So in one level of consciousness, he understands that he's lost his hand. But on the other hand, he's kind of in denial because he's saying, don't let him cut the hand off, even though the hand was already gone. And then we see that the doctor puts him in the dark of ether or ether. Another clip already mentioned that the dark here could also be a kind of foreshadowing of the boy's death. And even ether, it puts you in a state where you're not conscious. But of course, it does that to relieve pain and maybe to do an operation. And we see the boy with his breathing. And then the watcher at his pulse took fright. No one believed. They listened at his heart. Little, less, nothing. Now, I think this little, less, nothing is also a device to make us feel as if we're there, to make us feel that time is passing, and so that we're there as the pulse slowly, gradually gets slower. So it begins with little, less, until it finally gets to nothing. And then we have this very abrupt ending, and that ended it. Even the word it. I mean, you're talking about this boy's life, and you say that ended it. I mean, you would expect something like the poor boy passed away, or we have all of these nice ways of talking about death, what we call euphemisms. So that ended it is very abrupt, and I think it's reflecting what we see in the last two lines, that the apathy of society. They were not dead, so they went to their affairs. They don't really care, especially since there's no more to build on there. We mentioned in class, this is very utilitarian. It's like there's no more, we can't get anything else out of this boy. There's no more work we'll be able to get out of him, kind of relating to people only to the extent that they can give something to society, make an economic contribution to society. And since he can't, well, that's it, he's gone, and they go on to their own affairs. I think that these words are being said as a criticism of society. I know that not everyone, I know another clip we saw didn't see it that way. Another clip we saw said that this is reflecting that back, I don't know, the 70 or 80 years ago, people didn't care as much when, a child was killed because death was more common. I don't think that's true. I think that even 70 years ago and 200 years ago, I don't think people were apathetic about the death of a child, and especially we see him using the word boy throughout. I'm reminded of Little Women when Beth dies. It's such a tragic thing. I don't think that this is reflecting the fact that I don't think he's accepting this. I think this is a kind of scathing criticism of society for not caring about the boy. Now, if we look at the title Out, I already mentioned there are kind of two ways to understand it. If the standard interpretation is it comes from Out, brief candle, where Macbeth is talking about how life is so short and it's so easy to lose your life. I mean, you can lose your life as easily as snuffing out a candle, and that's what happens here. 1 second of inattention, especially, we mention reasons the accident happens. It's at night. Toward night, the sun is going down, the boy is tired. So in a split second, you could lose your life, and it's just like snuffing out a candle. A very, tiny movement with your hand can end your life. So a lot of people feel, most people say that out refers to that speech in Macbeth that ends by saying how life is short and that it's meaningless. But I've mentioned that there's another quote from Macbeth which is Lady Macbeth trying to wash her hands of the blood of the king. She encouraged her husband to kill the king. She didn't kill the king herself, but she encouraged him. And so afterwards, she feels she's partly responsible. She feels she has blood on her hands. And so she's trying to wash out the spot, and she keeps repeating, out, damn spot. And she can't get the blood off of her hands. Now, I kind of like that interpretation, because that might be saying that, even though none of us caused this accident, uh, we as a society have some responsibility for what happened, because we allow children to do work that's not appropriate for them. We allow child labor. And so we have a certain kind of responsibility. There's a little bit of blood on our hands because we as a society allow children to do this sort of labor. So that is a little review of Out, in addition to everything else we've discussed and other clips that you've seen. And I think it's a very powerful poem.